A very warm welcome to today's conversation. My name is Sophie Devonshire and I'm the Chief Executive of the Marketing Society. And it's been a really busy week for us here at the Marketing Society. We've hosted 4 amazing webinars, and we also last night celebrated our Brave Awards, a virtual ceremony which I know many of you who've dialed in today will have seen. But it was a great event. But I have to say, I've been really looking forward to today's conversation for a number of reasons. First of all, because this is one of our global conversations. We've had some fantastic feedback from our members about how much they're enjoying these discussions, to bring in the different perspectives and the stories from around the world at this time when many of us feel slightly isolated and perhaps under pressure in terms of the roles we have at work, to get some tips, some techniques, some ideas, some stimulation from across the globe has proved very helpful for a number of people, and is certainly interesting when we get the stories that come across. So I'm really delighted that this is our 4th global conversation. For me also, this is a very important one and a very interesting one. I'm now 4 weeks into my role with the Marketing Society, and I've been talking a lot to members and people within the marketing industry about what's important for us to discuss and what's important for us to support. And a number of people I know are very interested in the big question around what is the future of marketing. And in particular, this question we're discussing today is essential. What is the evolving role of the Chief Marketing Officer? How is it changing? What are the challenges they face? And what can we as a community, as a group of smart, brave marketeers do to support and to help that role evolve? Last night at our Brave Awards, we handed a virtual trophy, an augmented reality trophy, to the winner of the Bravest Marketing Leader of the Year award, Sarah Benison from Nationwide. And as I was thinking about today's discussion, I was reminded of something she said relatively recently about her role as Chief Marketing Officer of Nationwide. The responsibility she had actually expanded, but she was determined not to change the title. She kept it as Chief Marketing Officer because, as she said, we have to stand up for marketing if we want it to flourish. But there are questions about the role and what it covers. There are questions about how we make sure people see this role as important. And that's just a couple of the questions we're going to be talking about today. As ever, with these type of conversations, we're going to be bringing in a number of speakers to discuss, to debate, to argue and agree and give you some perspectives. But this isn't just about us. This is about each and every one of you who are listening. And I know we've got lots of people listening from around the world. So please, let's make this interactive and engaging. Let's have a big conversation with you involved. You'll all see at the bottom of your Zoom screen the classic chat function. And I know that many of our audience tend to be quite vocal, and I hope that you'll take this opportunity to come and say hello now on the chat function. I'd love to hear where you're dialing in from, wherever that is in the world. Come and say hello. And I'd also like to hear from everybody in the audience today. What do you think the biggest challenge is for the Chief Marketing Officer today? Come and dial in and tell us. Let's check that the chat function is working, and let's hear from you and see what you think about that. See if people are awake. Hello, Stephen. You're looking forward to it. Stephen, what do you think the biggest challenge is for the Chief Marketing Officer today? Hello, Edinburgh. Anna in Edinburgh. Ah, Nick, rapidly evolving technology. We're definitely going to be talking about technology today and where that is an accelerator for the Chief Marketing Officer and where it is a bit of a speed bump sometimes. Stephen, hello. Growth, the biggest challenge. Hello from Singapore. Zoe in Maryland, what do you think the biggest challenge is for the Chief Marketing Officer today? Freddie, the CMO needs to be the ultimate connector. Hello, India. Lots of great perspectives coming in already. Please keep chatting. Add your thoughts as we go through this. And one request, as well as the chat function below, you'll also see the Q&A function. Ask questions of our panelists. We've got some really smart speakers today, and there'll be things on your mind that you want to ask them. Please, when you have questions, just pop them in the Q&A function, and perhaps tell me if you want to ask all the panelists or if there's somebody in particular you'd like to ask. So now let me introduce you to the amazing guests we've got from around the world who'll be sharing their stories and their strong opinions on this topic. First of all, I would like to call in our representative from Hong Kong, the amazing Seraphina Wong. Hello, Seraphina.
Hello.
Seraphina,
Hi,
tell me, what word would you use to describe what the situation is for CMOs today?
Flexibility.
That's what's needed. Brilliant. Well, very, very warm welcome. Let's go across now to Singapore. Hello, Freddie. This is Freddie Covington, who's the Senior Vice President, Head of Marketing and Cross-Border Asia Pacific for Visa. Hi, Freddie. What do you think the situation is for the CMO today? How would you describe that in one word?
Well, welcome everyone. I would describe the CMO as being the ultimate connector. As I said, I think that more than ever, the Chief Marketing Officer needs to connect to customers and to a whole new range of stakeholders that we've never had to connect to before. So I would say the ultimate connector.
Great, and we're looking forward to hearing some stories from Singapore today. Let's go to Scotland now. Cara. Cara Chambers is the Marketing Director for International Beverages. Cara, what about you? What's the role for how would you describe the role of CMO today?
I think the word I wrote down when you sort of asked about this is dynamic, and I think I mean that in a really positive, as in just lots of change. It's dynamic, it's evolving. Dynamic
is a very positive spin on constantly changing and challenging, isn't it? Great word. Well, welcome, Cara. Thank you for joining us today. Also from London today, we have two separate representatives. We have, first of all, Sam Grant. Now, Sam, until recently, was the CMO at Samsung, but he's actually moved on to become a marketing consultant, talking about one of the biggest challenges and interesting areas for any CMO, which is climate change. So, Sam, the role of the CMO today, what's the situation in one word?
I think conflicted was the word that came to me when we first talked about it, in the sense that now more than ever, companies will be putting short-term pressure on marketing to drive revenue and regain lost ground. Yet the marketeer will always want to build brand health and brand values and purpose. So that fight still goes on.
Conflicted, a fight going on. And I'd also like to welcome Paul Graham from London, representing the Marketing Society board today. Paul, would you agree with that? What one word would you use to describe the situation for the CMO today?
Yeah, hello everyone, hello from London, and hello to the rest of the panel. It's one of those things with lots of these questions asked, you get you get to hear all the ones that you were going to tick off. A few of them came up. I particularly liked the point about flexibility. But if I had to choose a different one, I would say people. My word is people, as in, if we remember how our people work and behave and need us internally, and also the role we play in people's lives, I think we can't go far wrong as a CMO.
Talking about the people side also, yeah, we're going to be talking today about people, technology, all kinds of topics coming up. And Nikhil from India, please join us. Nikhil is the Marketing Director of Dyson India. Hello. What about you, Nikhil, from India? What word would you use to describe the current situation for the CMO?
Hey, I thought of 3 words and all 3 have been taken. So what's left is, I think CMOs are also now the chief digital officers in many organizations. And we are seeing in our markets and many other markets across the world, this big pivot to digital, this big shift from offline to online. And I think a CMO today needs to not only navigate, but probably champion this transition journey.
Brilliant. Okay, so some different perspectives as we go into this conversation. One of the fascinating aspects of 2020 is, of course, how much it's accelerated change and the way in which it has made challenges very, very different. Even just this year, I know a number of chief marketing officers have talked about what's happened with the crisis and how that's changed the role. So I'd really like to understand some of your perspectives, panelists, on what's happened this year. Cara, CMOs used to traditionally be responsible for creativity and brand, but as we've already started talking about here today, they now have responsibilities reaching far beyond that, spanning technology and analytics and growth. Is that a reflection of your role right now and what's happened in the last few months? Tell us your story.
Yeah, I think in the last few months, I think the key thing was, as soon as the crisis hit, we talked about it the other day, is that basically all the kind of functional roles almost disappeared. So we just became a leadership team together, and we had to focus immediately on what is happening to the business. How do we literally save our business in some cases? I mean, we're a global business, and we were watching premium spirits, malt whiskey and gin, and we sell in Asia, we sell in the US, in Western Europe, in the UK, and we were sort of watching our markets kind of go down one by one. India is a big market for us as well. And we literally had to almost sort of stop being the CFO, the CMO, the sales director. We were just like, right, we're a leadership team together. What is going on? What do we need to prioritize? And actually almost drop your sort of functional silos immediately and just turn into leaders of the business, and making some very clear decisions about what we could and couldn't do. And there were really tough calls to make around teams, around furloughing people, which obviously in the UK we could, maybe not necessarily in other markets. But I think it was really changing our conversations as a leadership team. So you kind of almost had to drop maybe some of the things you would normally dig your heels in over and go, right, the first thing is survival. And then only in the probably last few weeks, we've been able to start to say, okay, now we can start to, I'm probably the first one who's bringing people back to the medium to long term. So I think, it's kind of, we started talking about, we pretty much cut all the budgets. Actually, guys, we do still need to invest. And the language I've been using is investing, where I have a CFO who'll go, oh, we need to be careful and not spend money. And I'm saying, it's not spending, it's investing. Remember, we invested to get to where we are now. We've had to kind of take a short-term cut. Now we need to start investing, or we'll be really struggling in the future. So I think it's then, what's the right time to start having that conversation? It's when you're out of the absolute crisis.
But in the short term, the role then became just a leadership role and part of one team. Then I love the thought there that changing the language can impact how people see it, and reminding people that marketing is an investment for the future, not just a spend.
And when people are very frightened of that, when they're worried about cash and you're starting to talk about spending, then people feel uncomfortable. But if you start to talk about, right, what is the right things to invest in and why? And we've probably started talking in a much more, whereas in the past, my CFO would be like, that's your plan, crack on. Kind of, we know we've approved a plan for the year. But I'm probably talking much more to them now about, we're going to do this, guys. You're going to see this coming up. You're going to see this campaign on social media. This is why we're doing this just now. It's because this is a market where we can sell, where we know consumers can buy, because that's not the same all around the world with alcohol at the moment. And we know we're going to get paid by our customer. That's why we're now investing some money there. And people go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then everybody just feels a little bit calmer.
But yet again, you remind me, Cara, of the challenges for marketers in human understanding and communication isn't just about how we communicate with our audiences outside the business, but also bringing people together internally and making sure other members on the C-suite, other people inside the organisation really understand the value of what's happening.
Yes.
So taking time to make sure those communication skills are there.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, Cara.
No, I was going to say, I think at the moment that communication with your CFO, maybe rather than even your sales director, is probably more important, because they're the ones going, oh, cash, can we pay everybody? Can we pay the bills? And it's like, right, don't worry, I'm not about to run around spending lots of money. I'm
all
investing
about
for the future. Yeah.
So the relationship with the CFO as well.
Yeah.
And what about from a change perspective? Nikhil, I know that, you know, we've all had to pivot and change so much over the last few months. How's, you know, what's happened in the last few months affected your role in India and with Dyson, and what lasting impact do you think those pivots might have?
So I think I always say what a few years last 3 months have been. So it seems like a long time, and it's really, what it's done is it's really accelerated some of the things that were happening all around us. We all know the last 3 months, the US e-commerce penetration, for example, has grown as much as it grew in the last 12 years. So some of these changes are accelerated. Some of these changes are permanent. I'll give you a few examples of things that we do. You know, Dyson, across the world, we have our own Dyson stores, and we sell through third-party retail outlets primarily. And a large part of our selling was to essentially demonstrate our machines and the technology, how superior they are. And that's the reason why people pay premium and people buy their machines. Now, one of the reasons and one of the things that happened to us is that overnight, all of that stopped, and we had to still demonstrate the power of our technology to our consumers.
Oh.
So we came across on a wow footing. We changed the entire team, we coached them, and we took them online. And what we now have is a real-time online video demonstration. And what started like a small pilot in a few markets very quickly spread to all across. Now today in all our 90 markets, we do video demonstration to our customers. People can come to our website, they can chat to an agent. Probably the agent is in his or her bedroom or drawing room or the kitchen. They show how the vacuum helps clean him and her, and people really find that authentic. They are very understanding about it, and we have seen tremendous traction coming out on behalf of this small change. So a lot of these small and big pivots we had to do. So the entire contact center team that we had, for example, is all working from home, and people understand there would be interruptions because of power failures. There would be delays in terms of responding to chat messages. But I think it's both ways. Once people see that you're authentic and you're trying to genuinely help, I think consumers are far more understanding.
Yeah.
And many of the changes, like I spoke about, are fairly permanent in nature. So today now, more than half of our sales across the world is happening online. And that is something which was just 1/4 3 months back. So that part of our business has really doubled. So therefore, the technology investment, the investment in supply chain, a CMO really getting involved in the last mile supply chain decisions, which warehouse, last mile shipping cost, et cetera, are becoming quite central. So I think somebody pointed out a while back in terms of CMO bringing everybody together. I think increasingly the role of a CMO has also become like a chief collaboration officer, in my opinion. And really getting everybody on the table, talking to the CFO about the investment you're making, talking to the supply chain guys about the stock status, talking to the sales guy in terms of how we train and shift our resources, talking to technology to really gear up our e-commerce, and so on and so forth. And of course, human resources to really hold our people together. Because one of the big things that we probably underestimate is this entire thing about virtually people actually getting separated from each other, and after a while, it starts to show up. So how do we keep our teams motivated in this phase of severe budget cuts and challenging of every marketing dollar that you put in the market?
Yeah, and chief collaboration officer, but also in that story there, Nikhil, you're talking about the fact that the need to be creative about how you respond fast. So if marketers have always been particularly good at bringing together both the commercial and the creativity you've shown there in shifting and moving fast in itself is a fantastic story of how marketers can be the lead in terms of collaboration as well. I think that's a fantastic thing to keep for the future as we continue to see the role evolve. But I do think when you're talking about that side of it all, that there are always some risks involved when you're being creative and you're doing things differently. Within the Marketing Society, we always talk about our mission being to empower brave leadership, by which we don't just mean moral bravery, but also the ability to make commercial decisions when there is no certainty. Paul, from your perspective, how important do you think it is for chief marketing officers to be brave and to be able to be audacious?
Great question, and I think the only answer is that I think it's even more of an imperative now than it ever was. I think the key thing through any point in change, especially one as worldwide and as deep as is going on currently, is that of all the people in the business, I think the CMO or the marketing function are the ones that should really, really truthfully understand the authenticity of the brand, i.e. what's the real genuine core role it performs that people love it for or need it for and pay for, and therefore understanding how that still exists, digging into that and being true to that, which means potentially not investing or investing, but letting it be led by what the brand plays in the world, what role it plays, and then translating that in new ways for modern times, whether they're changing or whether they're the same. And I think that for me, especially in the, I've just finished a stint at Moet Hennessy, which was a luxury wines and champagnes business, which therefore wasn't necessarily the thing that everyone was rushing to buy some champagne to celebrate over the course of this year. Actually shifting that organisation immediately digital became the role the CMO was playing there. So the marketing function there all across the world was very, very, very focused on keeping the business together, keeping the people together, but making sure that everything that we did spend went immediately digital. And in fact, actually, I saw it as something that helped that organisation because they weren't that digital up until that point. But the drive to need to sort of keep the doors open and keep the sort of the tills ringing meant that digital became an imperative, and that was a good thing, I think, in the long term.
Yeah, the imperative of being the chief digital officer as well, and just being able to have that technological understanding for a chief marketing officer as well as the human understanding. And Seraphina, what do you think the most valuable asset is for a CMO in your opinion?
Well, I think, it's a very interesting time. I happen to work for an organization that has no concern of budget being cut. Our concern is people don't stay very long because it is a government-funded organization and is less flamboyant. So in terms of the CMO in this challenging time, my biggest challenge is definitely not resources in terms of budget being cut. I think is that role being socially responsible and volunteering to actually do something outside of the comfort zone. A lot of time it's like if your budget is not cut and you're well into the sort of Q2 now, so why don't you just get on with it and finish up the year, and then budget will come again next year. But in my situation, we actually launched a program to respond to the fresh graduate of 2020 just simply getting unemployed straight out, right? And there's a lot of marketing and lobbying efforts with the government. So my target audience certainly is not the public. It's actually marketing to the government to actually say that we got to do something for the public in terms of the 2020 graduates. Now, it's a story to say that in the end, it suddenly becomes an unintended CSR program, which actually, in this state of play, you can't be commercialized in sort of everything that you do. You have to sort of think of what's best for the organization and the society. And I think, the role of the CMO, my word earlier on was flexibility. And it's a flexibility not because of the role within which you sort of flex yourself and say, how do I move budget around? Or should I entirely do digital? Of course, right? And I cut out all the commercial aspects of it and measure it more diligently. That's almost like, obviously, right? But it's the flexibility of actually, if you have an idea that works, you go straight to the CEO. It's very seldom that people would say that, well, wait a minute, that's not what you put down in your 3-year plan. I think what is really interesting for me in a positive sense is that people are a lot more flexible in wanting new ideas and brave ideas because they're so lost. If an idea that remotely makes sense to saving the brand or the business or customer relationship or earn the media saying that, yep, you know, this guy's okay, then, sort of responding to what Cara said about the leadership team, is to be flexible enough to actually have that conversation. And sharing resources internally and discovering people personal situation that what will work for them more now and in the future than any time before. So that's the flexibility that I was talking about, is feeling licensed to actually say something from your good intent. Yeah. And not be measured by the strategy or your 3-year plan or your budget or the lack of the budget.
So the asset for a chief marketing officer of being able to be flexible and responsive to what's happening. I guess we all know, though, that pressure of short-term and long-term, the two-pace race, we've got to get things right and be able to respond quickly and also deliver today, as well as what you've talked about there, Seraphina, being responsible for the long-term as well. Sam, I'm conscious that for you, you've been inside Samsung, you know what it's like to have the short-term pressure in a marketing role, but now you're advising C-suite officers on how to look to the long term when it comes to climate change. You know, how do you help them manage that pressure of the short and long term, especially right now?
Well, earlier in the year before COVID kicked off, it was very much on people's minds in terms of, you had the Australia bushfires and Extinction Rebellion and Greta Thunberg was all hitting the headlines, and it was the number 1 concern, really. And I've been working with Unilever and Coke and all different and smaller businesses as well. Everybody was leaning forward and wanting to really be seen to be one of the good guys in this era of greenwashing and the potential for not being authentic. COVID has done 2 things. One is it obviously had a short-term dramatic effect on just destroying everybody's budgets and making everybody very focused on the short term and general sort of crisis management. But the second thing is that it's generally seen as being a very good indicator of what climate change will do to us, but climate change will be so much more more worse and more long affecting. So now that we're coming through into summer and autumn, companies are, the people that Unilever's, for instance, have been holding a steady course through this to keep true to their climate change agendas and their sustainability agendas, and so things will start to gradually wake up and green shoots will start to come through. But obviously in the short term, it's been short-termism.
Yeah. And this is a big challenge right now. And of course, looking at budgets. And Freddie, CMOs are more responsible now than ever before for not only managing their budgets, but also having a direct responsibility for their contribution to profitability. How have you managed that, or what do you think CMOs should be doing to make sure they get that right?
Well, I think when you talk about responsibility, you can see from the different answers that we've heard how much more extended that responsibility has become. Cara talked about the chief survival officer, Nikhil talked about the chief collaboration officer, Paul talked about the chief digital officer, Seraphina talked about the chief social officer, and Sam talked about the chief sustainability officer. I was writing down some notes and I'm thinking, oh my God, everyone's right. So the responsibility that is put into the chief office, not to mention being the chief everything officer at our homes, right? Because we have to be wives, friends, mothers, sisters, and all sorts of other things. So I think that the burden on the CMO has become greater. And, when I think about, what I went through in the last couple of months, that there are sort of 3 different audiences that have really been front of mind for me. And they are our people first, our customers second, and our brand third. And so whilst you asked me a question on profitability, I do want to re-rank order where the focus has been. The focus should and always be our people first. And I think what COVID has done is recalibrated for that. As leaders, we've realized, if we didn't know it already, that we are nothing without our people. And only those people who had strong ties, great relationships, great connections, were really able to survive and make their teams continue to operate in the current environment. So the first point of call wasn't about profit, it really was about people. And I have so much more to say about that in terms of how it's really fundamentally changed, I think, the way that we need to show up as leaders and as connectors, which is why I chose that word. The second area is really customers. I'm sure you've read, there's been quite a lot of talk around this notion of the low touch economy, which I think is really interesting. So how we have to recalibrate for our customers when they're in this low touch economy, no more close contacts, interactions, no more travel, obsession around hygiene, and not to mention a huge shift in consumer behaviors. So how we had to recalibrate for this low touch economy and find new avenues for growth without being selfish. We in our business at Visa typically spend enormous amounts for driving cross-border travel. Well, we had to stop that overnight. That didn't make sense anymore. And then the third audience is really the brand itself. I think taking a very good look in the mirror as to whether we have the right purpose. And I'm really proud that we've done that at Visa. We sort of embarked into some more profound conversations within the work from home environment, perhaps because we were confined, on why do we exist fundamentally as a brand? Are we just a payment device? Why is it that people don't know that we're not a credit card or that we're not a bank and that fundamentally we're a connecting platform? That's a problem. People don't understand who we are, what we do. How are we going to, I think in the words of Seraphina, exert more of this social influence and work with governments so they understand our bigger role in society? And I'd say all the way to the role we play fundamentally in economies and people's livelihoods with governments. So I know that's a bit of a twisted way to answer your question, but I think profit in a way is the ultimate, outcome of good behaviors for our people first, for our customers and for our brand.
Fantastic. Thank you, Freddie. I think the sense of overwhelm for chief marketing officers at the moment that you've described there, when you pull everything together, and the need to be chief everything officers, means that what everybody needs to do is prioritize. And your way of prioritizing there, to start with the people and look at the customers and the brand, gives a sense of making it manageable. And Cara, I know that thinking about how you motivate people and also thinking about purpose is really important to you as well. What would you add to this in terms of perspectives from Scotland?
Yeah, I think it really resonated with me about what Freddie was saying. There's two parts there. One's about travel, which I'll maybe come back to later, but the second one's about the team. And I think we're a medium-sized drinks business, but we're part of a global business. We're part of Thai Bev, which is a family-run business, and very much has a philosophy of our people are our family, and we treat our people like our family. And you suddenly had to really kind of go, right, what is everybody's situation? How are we going to look after them? We had some people skipping home going, brilliant, I'm going to work at home. We had other people going, I'm terrified of this. I've never done this. I don't know how I'm going to manage. I've got small children. I'm lucky I've got two teenagers. They're like sloths. They just stay in their bedrooms. So it's quite different. But I think it was that, I think when this all kicked off, I thought, oh, I'm going to get lots of time to do loads of strategic thinking and we're going to crack some really big stuff. And then within a couple of weeks, I was going, oh my God, all I have to do is literally look after my people day by day by day and just deal with what's coming at me, because somebody's having a crisis, somebody's having a bad day, somebody's not managing with their kids, somebody's husband's business is going down the pan, whatever it might be. And also my own stuff. And then so I'm thinking, right, I've got to turn up for my team every day and be Mrs. Superwoman and keep everything going. And then I have days where I'm going, actually, this is really getting me down. I've got teenagers who are trying to homeschool and I've got my own husband's business and I hate being at home. I'm an extrovert and I'm missing my team. And
very challenging, isn't it?
yeah, and it's that kind of sharing your own vulnerability. And I realized quite quickly I had to tell my team, you know what, guys, I'm having a down day today. You know, sort of, and it's okay to do that. And we started to talk much more about, right, where are we at in the curve of this, in our change curve? Let's look at things like, you know, go back to some good old sort of, you know, almost Myers-Briggs type stuff and go, who's the introverts, who's the extroverts? How are people going to be reacting? And this is where all that stuff really kind of comes into play, that you go, I've got to remember I do know this stuff, and now's the time to use it. Yeah.
But keeping it as human as possible, you know, in what feels like a very technologically driven experience as well.
Yeah.
There is that constant balance between thinking about the people and thinking about the technology and getting that right. Seraphina, what do you think's most important? What's been a priority for you? Is it actually getting it right in terms of motivating the people, or is it also what you've been doing from a technological leadership point of view? You need to come off mute. It's always
sorry. I think both. First of all, in my company, because it's technology research and people are actually very tech driven and tech minded. So in actually telling people that, you know, in a lockdown situation and how the business needs to be helped by tech is a no brainer. In fact, there's so many people really need to try to go back to work to continue the research because they can't sort of just remote. In my situation is like, I think like all the marketing demo, you know, virtualize it and demo booth and, you know, all those visits into our experience lab and innovation center that cannot happen can quite easily be converted into a B2B demo. I think particularly because it's not like a luxury brand, or I came from UBS, so, you know, the whole sophisticated, supreme quality of things will take like 100 years to make, right? Here, if you actually film some demo in your lab and show it to your B2B customer, they actually don't mind, for as long as it's accurate and it's fast and it's on time. So, you know, that technology helps a lot in communications and getting it quick to market. I think in terms of people, the mindset is, my experience are actually two types, right? One is just really is entrepreneurial and thinking outside the box, and maybe is in the response of you know, having a fear of losing the job.
Yes.
It actually push people to really think hard now. It's not about being territorial and protective. It's that fear of like, once you're out, you're not going to go to another company. Sometimes you have to sort of think of this as your last job, and you just have to be extremely entrepreneurial and be a business person and be creative and be brave. I actually think it's a lot of energy in it, and people are actually debating how to make things work, as opposed to, yeah, you know, wake me up, you know, when you have stopped the debate and I'll just maybe come in and do it. So I actually think technology drives a lot of efficiency, and it also drives people to have no more excuse, right? If you say that, you know, go use your cell phone and ship something to your customer now, they can't say, wait, you know, I need that 100,000 pounds in, you know, 3 months. There's no such thing anymore.
It's amazing. I mean, it's one of the positives for all of us, that we can move really fast and we can use technology to make things happen and respond quickly. And Nikhil, I know you've talked about that from your perspective in terms of what you're able to do fast. Technology moves at such a pace. How else can the marketing officer be set up to be able to continue to respond quickly?
So I think starting from technology first, so I think every marketer now and the teams need to be really, really proficient in terms of using digital tools and technology, and not everybody has been brought up in the same way and not from the same background. So we invested a lot in the last 3 months in terms of bringing our teams up to speed in terms of how to study customer journey online, or how to use database management, or how to do e-commerce. And, you know, I mean, I learned along with them. And the other thing we did was that we did a lot of these sessions within the leadership teams as well, so that people are clearly aware where are we guiding them? Where are we navigating them? I think somebody mentioned here that there was a sense of overwhelm even within leadership teams, and people were actually more receptive to new things and new ideas. They just wanted to see a leader who's willing to take his hand up and willing to take the risk. I think we did that, and we got some success, but people were quite open to listen. The other thing we do is now that we have created like a complete digital dashboard of our business, which we now review cross-functional across the team. So it's not a marketing review. It's for sales, it's for supply chain, it's for finance, everybody to see what is the traffic do we get, what are the conversions, and so on.
Connect everybody up and communicate.
It lifts everybody up. People are very open to learn. And then, therefore, to Cara's point, they know that why are you now investing? Because, hey, this is the net outcome that's going to come out of this. And there is a glide path to it that you need to constantly talk about. You need to show people the picture that it's not end of the world. 6 months down the line, customers are going to come back to stores. People are going to start traveling and so on and so forth. So how do we set ourselves up for the long run? I think somebody mentioned that, I think Cara mentioned about investment. One of the things that we saw across all brands globally is that companies that invested in brand building and customer engagement over the course of years really benefited quite a lot during this crisis. Because when there is a low touch economy and people don't have time to really process your messages, what they already know and whom they already trust, they are far more inclined to actually purchase from them or do business with them. So again, how do we reinforce or kind of bring that message back is another important thing that CMOs need to constantly do, because we are in 2020, but we are already in 2021 budget plannings and things like that. So what could be seen by a CFO as, hey, I cut the marketing budget tab, but the sales are still happening. This is great. So actually you only need X dollars per sales as marketing investment is not true. And you need to bring about that picture that how over a period of time this investment is, and then you can only leverage it for 3 to 6 months, and you need to keep the tap on, or you need to keep the flame on. Otherwise, this is going to die down. And we all know how consumers are switching choices in today's scenario. So people are even way more willing to experiment with newer brands and newer services.
So the danger there for any CMO is that other people are using what's happened in the last few months as an example, to use the future, and to be able to show them and give them a sense of, the importance of investing for the long term, and being the optimist as well, the future planning officer as well as everything else.
Also, sort of setting, helping them set the right benchmarks for what a certain performance is. So it's not for a month or a quarter, but it's over a period of, so you talk a lot more about averages, and you talk a lot about customer lifetime value, things that a CFO understands, but also takes pressure off short-term investments, because right now nobody's investing as much because everybody's in survival mode. But come 6 months down the line, life has to go on, and there is a lot of opportunity for many brands and companies to grow their business.
Yes.
And I think just to build on that, and it actually probably takes me back to Freddie mentioned about travel, I think it's also our role to show people what some of the maybe unexpected or unintended consequences of this kind of pandemic has been. And that, some people are saying, oh, we're going to go to a new normal, and other people are saying, no, everybody's just going to bounce back to normal. And actually it's pointing out where things are going to be really quite different. So one of the examples for us in the drinks industry is that travel retail is a huge shop window for us. We don't make a huge amount of money out of it, but it's almost like a huge marketing tool. All those lovely displays in airports all around the world. Everybody's terrified of traveling at the moment. Look at what's going on with, holidays and quarantine, and people aren't going to be traveling. And you suddenly go, rather than, need to have those conversations today. This isn't just about trying to desperately rebuild that channel. We may have to do things completely different, because that channel may never come back in the way that it was before. And it will look really silly if we keep going, let's pile money into it to try and sort of build displays in empty airports. And it's going to say, right, we need to rethink our whole kind of route to market in some sense of where do we find that kind of a display, that kind of brand building in a different environment. And I think a lot of people, it's that kind of, guys, look ahead, skip 2 steps ahead and say, right, what do we need to do differently? Because there's some structural things in the whole industry that are just going to bounce back differently, and we will then need to be present differently. So behaving like you used to when people start going on holidays again might look really out of place.
Some things have changed, some have accelerated, you know, but making sure we've got our finger on the pulse about what are the implications 6 months ahead.
Yeah.
And again, you know, we've talked about how important it is to measure, to illustrate it, and I think KPIs and what we're measuring and valuing is changing a lot. And Sam, I know that for you, the sense of what we need to measure right now for the long term has also changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you guys are probably all familiar with how capitalism is being seen as one of the things that has to change radically for us as a species to be able to continue, because if we constantly look for infinite GDP growth and only measure profitability, then that can't carry on, obviously, because we're using 4 Earths worth of resources as it is now, let alone what it'll be when the population expands. So how that will go forward is probably actually more in the finance community, in the investment community, about how ESG, you know, environment, sustainability, governance goals are more elevated in how companies are able to succeed financially. And I hope that will accept this. COVID probably has been caused by an ecological collapse, because the forests that the wild animals were living in have been destroyed, so they've been displaced, so the disease kicks off much more likely, you know, it's much more like, it's all linked. And we either put our heads in the sand and just try to go back to an old normal and make things okay again, and sort of, you know, or we accept it. And I think marketeers have got a really strong role in this, because as it adds the list of, you know, the chief future officer and the chief purpose officer, or whatever you might want to call it. I think we have to bring people together so that these types of huge issues don't just live in corporate affairs, or maybe in a corporate office in headquarters somewhere far away
from... The marketing officer needs to be involved in that as well. I'm reminded, Sam, at our awards ceremony last night, Sil Salah, who is the Marketing Society's president and was also chair of the judges, talked about the opportunity not just to build a new normal, but build a better normal. And I do think there's a sense for lots of chief marketing officers at the moment about how we get that right. I'm conscious, everybody, that there are some great questions coming through, so I'd just like to reflect some of those in what we're asking. And I mean, Freddie, or if anybody else has a perspective on this, the idea of the CMO and the CTO being best friends, which has never been more relevant right now, as Catherine from the audience talks about. Yeah, have you changed any ways of working between technology and marketing during this crisis? And Freddie, anything from you or anybody else that may?
Yeah, I think what's been said by the other respondents so far is we're completely technology dependent, you know, so we're living in virtual leadership, virtual teams, virtual conferences, everything is virtual. So if, you know, you were not already quite technology conversant, I think that would be very difficult. Someone also, I think Cara mentioned the channel shift. The major channel shift is that, you know, every business has had to go from online to offline. I'll give you a little story. My 14-year-old son, Max, had torn his shorts because, you know, just doing a lot of trouble at his, in his bedroom while I'm trying to work. And he said to me, oh, you know, I'll just go to Pull and Bear, his favorite fashion label. And he's like, I'll just, you know, buy myself some new shorts online. I said, oh, that's great. Then 5 minutes later, he comes back absolutely outraged. He goes, can you believe it, Mummy? They don't have an online store. So when you go on the website, they tell you contact the store or find a store. He was raging, just going, this is ridiculous. And I was thinking, well, there goes the channel shift, you know. So whether you're an individual or whether you're, you know, a business, if you haven't, you know, if you were not ready for that big channel shift to online, that was going to be a problem. You know, so I know that the relationship between CMO, CTO has always been at the forefront. In many ways, I think things are slightly different because the CTO it's always been about, you know, a lot of infrastructure plays. And I feel almost the discussions have been different. Certainly we haven't been discussing, you know, big infrastructure. We've been discussing small things that matter, like can we use Zoom or Skype or MS Team? And, you know, everybody's got 2 computers. And if for some reason, like I'm calling you from my Mac because Zoom is not allowed at my company, you know, you just make do. So maybe gone from, you know, bring your own device to, you know, make your own way kind of behavior, I think, a little bit.
That still needs to evolve. And this sense of all these things that we all need to be learning right now. We need to learn about technology. We need to learn about what's happening in terms of a broader societal context. We need to learn the new and evolving ways in which we can be great at marketing. And a great question from Nick in the audience. With the growing requirements of CMOs, what are the best sources for you in terms of learning, inspiration, how you curate what you need to know? Any top tips for the audience?
One of the things I'd say is, and I'm not sure if this is somewhere across the rest of the market. Oh, I'm getting a bit of feedback there from somebody's microphone. Not sure if this is across the whole of the Marketing Society, but certainly in Scotland we've got a mentoring program in the Marketing Society, which is really, really useful. So we match up senior leaders with sort of people in kind of, you know, middle kind of roles, and then we also have kind of maybe younger mentors who are mentoring our kind of graduate leaders. And I think I found it, because my boss is actually based in Thailand and we have kind of fairly infrequent contact, needing to find some kind of support maybe from people who are going through the same thing at the same time. So I just maybe reached out to some of our leaders of our agencies just to kind of go, hi, how are things going for you, and kind of what's happening. But there's been loads of, I think Freddie, you maybe typed in the answer there, there's been loads of webinars, and, you know, jump on a kind of Mark Ritson type webinar or something and just kind of go, oh, that stuff that's kind of been going around in my head, you know, other people are thinking about it. And so I think that's been
great Marketing Society plug generally there in terms of the access to connections and mentors. And we have got some amazing webinars coming up, including Mark Ritson, who's joining us for Amplify in Scotland for our hub. Okay, yeah. So I guess what you're saying there is find other people who will help curate it for you. That sounds brilliant. And I mean, there are so many things we've talked about here today. I'm conscious that everybody listening needs to go away and work out what next. We're in this funny stage right now for a lot of people right across the world, I think, where the first phase of responding to COVID has, you know, we've pivoted, we've done a lot, it felt like a sprint, and now there's a bit of a pause where we realize it's a marathon. And I think a lot of people are reflecting on what next. What I'd love to ask each of you as panelists is, what is the one piece of advice you would give everybody listening in terms of their leadership, in terms of standing up for marketing, in terms of the one thing that they could do or should do in order to survive and thrive in their marketing roles? Nikhil, perhaps I could start with you. What would you recommend to everybody?
I think one of the things that could be useful is to not only look at short-term first-order impact on your business, but also try to consider the second-order or the third-order effects, if I may, that would probably change how consumers behave, how they buy from you, what is the way you see your business evolve. And you need to create some scenarios there and then plan for that. So for example, just to highlight the point, if people are staying more at home and people are worried about viruses, we estimate that people will be way more health and hygiene conscious, and therefore they would probably invest a lot more in home purification and vacuum cleaners and things like that. But probably the way they will buy and the way they will use these machines will be different. In India, for example, we had tons of domestic help that used to come and do the cleaning. Now people are going into a DIY phase. So like that, for each industry and each business, what is the second and third order impact that you see on your business in the next 6, 12, and 18 months time? I think one needs to be almost prepared for that.
Make that prediction. Yes, and as Margaret's just said in chat, scenario planning workshops, practical, tangible thing to look at. Brilliant. Paul, what about for you? What do you think is the one thing that we should make sure we're focusing on next? With coming off mute. Practicing.
Let's get that. There we go. I think it's actually embrace the future, as in the world changes every single day. People who think that they can keep it the same are playing a loser's game anyway. But if anything has been taught now, something happened, the world has changed, just let it go. Let it go, don't look back, don't refer to how things used to be. Where are you going? Do you have the brand
moving forward?
Right. Yeah, the purpose, get it all right and look forwards and keep going.
Keep going. Seraphina, what about you? One last thing.
Be visionary, be knowledgeable.
Yeah.
The two things, you got to be very knowledgeable to actually be able to cope with the future and not just sort of thinking that I'm a marketer, so I know marketing campaign. You got to be actually very knowledgeable and watch a lot of news and have a sense of where things are going in a very visionary way. There are opportunities out there that we don't even know. So I'm hopeful.
I like the optimism. Freddie, are you feeling optimistic? What would you advise people to do as a takeaway from this discussion today?
I'm definitely feeling optimistic, but I'm an optimist at heart, so I think it's just more about my character. You know, I think Cara mentioned we do have ups and downs. It is hard, you know, certain days you just don't want to get out of your bed. You're like, well, I only have 1 meter to go over to my desk, so it's a bit of a bore. So you have to stay optimistic, and I think you have to do it for your team, because they need to see someone who still has the appetite to try new things, want new things. You know, I live in Singapore. If I go half an hour away in my car, I'm at the border, and I haven't been able to go anywhere in 6 months. It's really hard. So you have to keep the faith. I think one way to expand your universe, and one of the things I answered on the questions, is keep learning. I mean, that's how you're going to stay optimistic. I've never said yes to so many conferences than before, because it's virtual. It's easy. You can drop in and out. If you don't like it, you can leave, and just, you know, connect with more people, create more community, listen to more folks with different perspective. I think that's how you're going to remain optimistic and avoid the feeling of it, you know, introversion and potentially, you know, limits on your physical geography. So yeah, I think more community through virtual means and through technology. That's what I'm trying to do. Just say yes to everything, and that'll expand your world.
Say yes to it all and expand the world. Well, you've led me very neatly to my next point there, Freddie. Thank you so much. The opportunities we have, and saying yes to being part of a community. It's one of the reasons I took this job, why I believe in the Marketing Society, because I think by being more connected, we can learn from each other, and we can learn in an easy and accessible way. And for everybody listening, there are 2 great other opportunities to learn and connect coming up that I would just like to mention. Next Tuesday, we're hosting our Future Leaders programme, streaming live from Scotland, featuring David Craik, who's the founder and MD of Bright Signals, and I definitely recommend that. And I definitely would love you all to join on Wednesday, the 5th of August at 1 p.m. We've got a fantastic session launching the Excerpts by Experts book, which is a book sharing the inspiration and optimism and stories of marketing leaders within the industry in aid of the NHS. And you've got insights and stories from all kinds of people. Definitely join us for that. It's being chaired and moderated by our chair of the Marketing Society, Craig, and it's next Wednesday at 1 p.m. So hope you can join both those sessions. Learning and evolving is a really important part of what everybody's doing. Please, could you all watching just take a couple of seconds now to help us learn? There is a poll coming up so we can get a sense of how you felt and what you want next. I'd also like to invite everybody listening to stay in touch with all of us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, and to connect personally with me. Send me a message at sophie@marketingsociety.com or on LinkedIn if there are things you'd like to see, if there's feedback you'd like to give about what more we can do to support brave leaders and smart and brilliant people inside the marketing industry. Thank you, a huge thank you to all our busy and brilliant panelists today who've taken the time to think about this. Really appreciate it. We're going to try and ask everybody here to actually just feedback on that last question, and we will share some of your insights with everybody else. But for now, thank you everybody. Stay curious, stay connected, and stay optimistic.